April 1944, somewhere in France. The German woman clutched her papers tightly, her hands trembling not from the spring chill but from terror. Helga Schmidt, aged 22, had served 14 months as a Nachrichtenhelferin, a female communications auxiliary for the Wehrmacht, routing messages between command posts in occupied France. She'd been told repeatedly what Americans did to captured German women. Nazi informational films had shown reenactments, starvation rations, forced labor, humiliation, abuse. As American forces approached her position outside St. Lo, she'd destroyed her uniform jacket and changed into civilian clothes. It hadn't helped. Her military identification papers betrayed her. "Keine Sorgen," the American sergeant had said in broken German. "No worries." But Helga didn't believe him. She'd been trained not to. Like the 19,000 other Nachrichtenhelferinnen serving the German military in 1944, she'd absorbed years of propaganda about American barbarism. Now she sat in a temporary holding facility with 11 other captured female auxiliaries, awaiting transport to what she presumed would be a nightmare. The first surprise came within hours. American female personnel, WACs they called themselves, provided the German women with clean clothing, hygiene supplies, and food. Not the crusts and watery soup Helga expected, but a meal. Canned meat, white bread, jam, coffee with real sugar, and powdered milk. The German women ate cautiously, expecting a trick. According to military processing records later declassified, captured female auxiliaries received standard rations, approximately 3,200 calories daily, from their first day in American custody. "This is American Army food," an interpreter explained as Helga stared at her plate. "Everyone gets the same." This seemed impossible. In the Wehrmacht, female auxiliaries received 2,000 calories daily when supplies permitted, less than male soldiers, more than civilians. By 1944, even that reduced ration was often unavailable. Helga had subsisted on 1,400 calories daily for months, saving portions of her bread for desperate French children who gathered outside the communication center. Military intelligence reports from May 1944 documented the psychological effect of this initial feeding. German women expected to be starved into compliance. Instead, Americans fed them adequately from the start. This fundamental contradiction of Nazi claims created immediate cognitive dissonance. "The Americans have so much they can afford to feed prisoners well," one captured auxiliary wrote in a diary confiscated during processing. "If they are so desperate for resources as our leaders claimed, this would be impossible." As Allied forces consolidated control of northern France, approximately 1,800 German female auxiliaries were captured. Signal Corps records show 63% served in communications roles, 18% in administrative positions, 12% in air defense operations, and 7% in various support functions. Unlike male soldiers, these women were not immediately shipped to America. Military authorities debated their status under the Geneva Convention. During this limbo period, the women remained in temporary facilities where American abundance continued to undermine Nazi narratives. Breakfast included eggs, powdered, but still eggs, when German civilians hadn't seen eggs for months. Dinner featured canned fruit, a luxury that had disappeared from German tables years earlier. Each day of adequate feeding eroded years of propaganda. By June 1944, military authorities determined that female auxiliaries in uniform qualified as prisoners of war under Geneva Convention provisions. Preparations began for transport to permanent facilities in America. Processing documents reveal that many women feared this transfer, expecting conditions to worsen once they left the frontline holding centers. "We were told Americans treated prisoners humanely only for propaganda photographs," recalled Margaret Müller in a 1987 interview. "We expected the true treatment to begin once cameras disappeared." Instead, as they boarded transport ships at Cherbourg, the women received another shock. The same rations as their American guards, including items that would foreshadow their coming transformation. Small bars of Hershey's chocolate, individually wrapped, casual treasures that most hadn't tasted since before the war. July 1944, mid-Atlantic. The Liberty ship USS Hermitage swayed beneath Helga Schmidt's feet as she stood in line for breakfast. After 11 days at sea, the routine had become familiar. Wake at 0600, clean barracks, proceed to mess. She had expected a nightmarish crossing. Nazi training films had described American transport ships as floating concentration camps, where German prisoners subsisted on starvation rations while guards ate abundantly before them. Instead, the reality confounded everything she had been taught. The metal tray slid along the serving line, accumulating portions that seemed impossibly generous. 2 eggs, powdered but reconstituted, 3 strips of bacon, toast with butter and jam, hot oatmeal with sugar, and coffee with real milk. Naval records from the USS Hermitage document that female German prisoners received identical rations to American personnel, approximately 3,100 calories daily. The contrast with Helga's Wehrmacht rations, 1,800 calories daily by 1944, was stark enough, but compared to civilian German rations, approximately 1,000 calories by 1944 when available, the abundance seemed fantastical. "I keep waiting for the true American treatment to begin," she confided to Margaret Müller as they sat eating. "Perhaps when we reach America." But Margaret, who had worked in Wehrmacht supply administration before capture, shook her head. "Look at their logistics," she whispered. "This ship feeds 1,800 people 3 full meals daily without resupply for 2 weeks. That requires planning, production capacity, storage. You cannot fake such things." Indeed, the Hermitage's massive refrigeration system maintained fresh provisions throughout the journey, a technical achievement beyond German military capability by 1944. The ship's baker produced fresh bread daily, a luxury that had vanished from much of Germany. Most surprisingly, on Sundays, the mess served ice cream, a frozen indulgence German women hadn't tasted in years. Naval records confirm that transport ships bound for American POW facilities carried mechanical ice cream makers capable of producing 15 gallons per hour. "It tastes like childhood," whispered Ingrid Hoffmann, another communications auxiliary, as the cold sweetness melted on her tongue. "Like the world before everything." This simple dessert, casually served to prisoners of war, began dismantling years of ideological certainty. Wehrmacht instructional materials had repeatedly emphasized American material weakness, a nation of frivolous consumption that would collapse when faced with German determination. Yet here was American frivolity, ice cream in wartime, reflecting not weakness, but extraordinary productive capacity. As the Hermitage approached the Virginia coast, the women gathered their few possessions. Most had gained weight during the crossing. Medical records show an average increase of 2.8 pounds among female German prisoners during Atlantic transport. Their improved physical condition contrasted sharply with the progressive deterioration of civilians in Germany, where food shortages had become critical by summer 1944. The first glimpse of America came at dawn, Norfolk Naval Station spreading across the horizon. German women crowded the deck, straining to see the enemy homeland they had been taught was crumbling under bombing and deprivation. Instead, they beheld a port humming with activity. Cranes loading cargo, ships entering and departing, trains moving supplies, a functioning industrial system under full wartime production. "It cannot be real," insisted Helga, still clinging to her training. "This must be a prepared display." But the scale defied such explanation. Norfolk Naval Station in 1944 processed more cargo daily than Hamburg had managed weekly before Allied bombing. The evidence of American industrial might stretched beyond what propaganda could dismiss. As they disembarked, each woman received a processing package, toiletries, clean clothing, and remarkably, a Hershey chocolate bar. This casual distribution of chocolate, strictly rationed in Germany even before the war, epitomized the difference between societies. German supply chain management had prioritized military necessities by eliminating civilian luxuries. The American system somehow produced enough for both military necessities and chocolate bars for prisoners. Loaded onto passenger trains with cushioned seats and dining cars, the German women began their journey inland. Through the windows, they observed America at war, factories operating at full capacity, fields under cultivation, towns showing no signs of bombing or deprivation. Ahead lay the prison camps where they expected, finally, to encounter the harsh American treatment they had been promised. Instead, an even more profound revelation awaited. August 1944. Camp Kennedy, Texas. The desert heat shimmered above the camp's administration building as Helga Schmidt entered the mess hall for her first meal on American soil. The large room, filled with wooden tables and benches, looked nothing like the bleak feeding center she had anticipated. Most shocking was the serving system itself. A cafeteria line where women selected their own food portions from multiple options. This self-service approach contradicted everything about German military hierarchy, where rations were strictly allocated according to rank and role. Take what you want, but eat what you take, the American WAC supervisor explained through an interpreter. Helga stared at the options. Roast beef with gravy, mashed potatoes, green beans, bread with butter, apple pie, and milk. The portion sizes seemed absurd. 3 ounces of meat per person when German civilians received less than that weekly. Military records from Camp Kennedy confirmed that female prisoners received approximately 3,400 calories daily, more than double what German civilians received in 1944. "Is this special treatment?" Margaret asked an American guard. The guard laughed. "This is Tuesday dinner. Nothing special." This casual abundance revealed more about American industrial capacity than any propaganda could convey. The system that could feed prisoners this well while fighting a global war must have resources beyond German comprehension. The women's barracks at Camp Kennedy further contradicted Nazi warnings. Each woman received an individual bed with mattress, sheets, and blanket. Electric lights illuminated the buildings. Indoor plumbing provided hot showers and flush toilets. These basic amenities, unremarkable to Americans, struck the German women as luxurious. By 1944, bombing had damaged German water and electrical systems so severely that many civilians lived without reliable utilities. Most surprising was the Camp PX, a store where prisoners could purchase additional items using credits earned through camp work. Helga earned 80 cents daily for clerical duties, enough to buy extraordinary luxuries. Chocolate bars, 5 cents, Coca-Cola, 5 cents, ice cream, 10 cents, cigarettes, 15 cents per pack, and various toiletries. This system of work and reward mirrored normal American economic patterns. Prisoners participating in the American economy, even in this limited way, received a practical education in democratic capitalism. "The chocolate tastes different here," observed Ingrid Hoffman, savoring a Hershey bar purchased with her first pay. "Smoother, more consistent." This standardization reflected American mass production techniques. Hershey's Pennsylvania factory produced millions of identical chocolate bars monthly, a manufacturing achievement beyond German industrial capability by 1944. The company's records show that despite wartime restrictions, civilian chocolate production continued alongside military contracts totaling £380 million during the war years. The kitchen assignments proved particularly educational. German women working alongside American staff observed food preparation methods that reflected abundance rather than scarcity. Camp records document weekly deliveries: 200 pounds of meat, 800 pounds of fresh vegetables, 600 pounds of fruit, 200 pounds of butter, and 1,800 pints of milk. These quantities for a camp housing 400 women exceeded what might supply 1,000 German civilians during the same period. "They discard food we would treasure," Helga noted in a letter, later confiscated by censors. "Vegetable trimmings, stale bread, excess fat, all thrown away." This casual waste contradicted core Nazi economic principles of scarcity management. German women raised on strict conservation found American abundance almost offensive in its excess. American female personnel, WACs and civilian staff provided another shocking contrast. These women drove vehicles, operated machinery, and held positions of authority. They wore makeup, styled their hair, and received the same rations as male personnel. The equality displayed contradicted Nazi gender hierarchies, where women's rations and roles remained strictly subordinate. Sunday dinners showcased American abundance most dramatically. Camp records show that standard Sunday meals included roast chicken, 2 vegetables, potatoes, bread, butter, cake with icing, and ice cream. This single meal provided more protein and sugar than German civilians received in a week. The psychological impact of this weekly feast systematically eroded beliefs about American scarcity. Each Sunday, Nazi economic theory suffered another defeat, measured in clean plates and satisfied appetites. November 1944. Farm country outside Camp Kennedy. Helga Schmidt stood in a tomato field that stretched to the horizon, her hands stained red from harvesting. As labor shortages intensified, American authorities had implemented work programs for prisoners, including the female auxiliaries. Military records indicate that approximately 75% of detained German women participated in agricultural work by late 1944, gaining first-hand exposure to American food production systems. "So many will be thrown away," Helga remarked, noting the tomatoes her American supervisor deemed too small or blemished for commercial sale. Approximately 20% of the harvest was rejected for cosmetic imperfections. Food that would have been precious in Germany diverted to animal feed or compost in America. This casual discarding of edible food shocked the German women more than any propaganda film could have predicted. At a nearby cannery, where Helga worked 3 days weekly, the industrial scale of food processing revealed American productive capacity. The facility processed 40 tons of vegetables daily, with assembly lines, pressure cookers, and automated packaging that dwarfed German food preservation methods. German women accustomed to careful home canning watched as machines sealed thousands of identical cans hourly. The standardization, the volume, the efficiency all contradicted Nazi claims about American industrial inferiority. "One factory produces more food than an entire German district," Margaret Müller observed after her first day at the cannery. Military records confirm that single American food processing facilities often exceeded the output of entire German regions. A cannery near Camp Kennedy produced approximately 240,000 cans daily, enough to feed a German city for a week, manufactured in a single day. School lunch programs particularly fascinated the German women. Work details near schools observed American children receiving hot meals daily: fresh milk, protein, vegetables, and often dessert. The National School Lunch Program was not yet formalized, but predecessor programs operated in many districts. The concept of systematically feeding children well during wartime contradicted everything about German sacrifice narratives. In Germany, children received reduced rations. In America, they received chocolate milk and ice cream. "They feed their children like this while fighting a global war," Ingrid whispered, as their work detail passed a school cafeteria. What does this mean about everything we were told? The sight of American children casually discarding half-eaten apples or sandwich crusts, food that German children would have treasured, delivered a psychological blow no interrogation could have achieved. When permitted to visit local businesses under guard, German women encountered diners and grocery stores that further demolished Nazi economic claims. A typical American diner in 1944 offered menu items that had disappeared from German restaurants years earlier. Hamburgers, 25C, eggs, 35C, pie, 15C, ice cream sundaes, 25C, and coffee with unlimited refills, 10C. These prices, accessible to average workers, represented perhaps 2 hours of labor for items unavailable at any price in wartime Germany. The grocery stores proved even more devastating to German economic assumptions. Shelves stocked with multiple brands of similar products, 5 types of breakfast cereal, 6 brands of canned vegetables, numerous soap options, demonstrated a consumer choice system that Nazi economic planning had explicitly rejected. Despite rationing, American civilians in 1944 maintained access to variety and volume unimaginable in Germany. Military procurement records show American civilians purchased approximately 73 pounds of sugar per capita in 1944 despite rationing, more than 10 times German civilian access when available. Holiday celebrations delivered the most profound contrast. Thanksgiving 1944 introduced German women to a purely American tradition that showcased national abundance. Camp records document the standard meal: roast turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, sweet potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, rolls with butter, pumpkin pie, and coffee with cream. This single meal contained more sugar, fat, and protein than German civilians received in 2 weeks. The logistics required to provide such meals simultaneously to millions of Americans, including prisoners, revealed organizational capacity beyond German achievement. By December 1944, as desperate letters from Germany described worsening conditions at home, the female auxiliaries began sending packages rather than expecting to receive them. Using camp wages, they purchased American products to mail home: coffee, chocolate, soap, canned goods. Red Cross records confirm that German prisoners in American camps sent approximately 1.2 million parcels to Germany by war's end. The psychological impact of captive women sending food to free family members in Germany systematically inverted Nazi narratives about American deprivation and German abundance. "The Americans have so much," wrote Helga in a letter passed by censors, "that their prisoners eat better than our soldiers." This simple observation, multiplied across thousands of similar communications, accomplished what no propaganda program could. It revealed through direct experience the fundamental economic disparity between systems. Each meal served in American prison camps demonstrated that democratic capitalism had outproduced German National Socialism without resorting to conquest or slave labor. February 1945. Camp Kennedy Infirmary. The American nurse recorded Helga Schmidt's weight, 143 pounds, an increase of 17 pounds since her arrival 6 months earlier. Medical records from female POW facilities document this pattern across populations. German women captured in 1944 gained an average of 12.6 pounds during their first 6 months in American custody. This physical transformation occurred while civilians in Germany lost weight steadily as food shortages intensified during the war's final months. "You're the healthiest prisoner I've examined this week," the nurse remarked through an interpreter. Helga's medical examination showed improvements beyond weight: better dental health, normalized blood pressure, resolution of vitamin deficiencies common among newly captured prisoners. The American diet, criticized by Nazi propaganda as unhealthy and excessive, had systematically rebuilt bodies depleted by years of European rationing. Camp medical records document significant health improvements among 94% of female German prisoners by early 1945. This physical transformation paralleled a deeper psychological one. "I no longer believe anything I was taught," Helga confided to her diary, which would later be preserved in military archives. "If they lied about America's food and resources, what else was false?" This cognitive dissonance, the gap between Nazi claims and observed reality, created profound ideological ruptures. Intelligence officers monitoring prisoner communications noted increasing skepticism toward Nazi narratives among female auxiliaries, with food abundance cited as the primary evidence contradicting official German positions. Letters home became exercises in coded communication. Military censors redacted explicit descriptions of American abundance. But women developed subtle methods to convey reality. "I am well and have grown stronger," Helga wrote to her mother in Berlin. "Do not worry about sending anything. I have all I need." These seemingly innocuous statements transmitted revolutionary information. German prisoners in America didn't need supplemental food packages. For German families receiving letters from relatives in American captivity, these messages contradicted everything about prisoner treatment they had been taught. News from Germany intensified the contrast. By early 1945, civilian rations in Berlin had fallen to approximately 1,100 calories daily, less than one-third what German women received in American camps. Letters described increasing desperation: bread made with sawdust filler, meat available only through black markets, vegetables limited to turnips and cabbage when available. A letter to Margaret Müller, preserved in camp records, reported, "We melt snow for water since pipes are damaged. No electricity for weeks. We burn furniture for warmth. Children receive priority for food, but there is little to prioritize." Against this backdrop of German civilian suffering, camp life seemed increasingly surreal. Records show that even as Berlin faced starvation, Camp Kennedy maintained its standard meal program: breakfast with eggs, lunch with meat sandwiches, dinner with protein, vegetables, dessert. The juxtaposition between these realities created what psychiatrists later termed inverted deprivation trauma, the psychological distress of experiencing abundance while loved ones suffered scarcity. As Allied forces advanced through Germany, newsreels shown in camp recreation halls revealed further contradictions to Nazi narratives. German women watched American soldiers distributing chocolate and chewing gum to German children, casual generosity from supposed barbarians. "They give candy to German children while fighting German soldiers," noted Ingrid Hoffmann. "This makes no sense in the worldview we were taught." This simple observation identified the fundamental ideological divide. American abundance was not zero-sum. Production rather than conquest generated wealth. The psychological transformation accelerated as Germany's collapse became apparent. Military intelligence interviews conducted in February 1945 found that 72% of female German prisoners expressed skepticism about Nazi economic theories, citing their direct experience of American abundance as contradictory evidence. "I believe Germany sacrificed for strength, while America weakened through luxury," one auxiliary told an interviewer. "Now I see their luxury as their strength. They have so much they can afford to waste, to give away, even to enemies." As victory approached, American authorities implemented re-education programs for prisoners. Female auxiliaries proved particularly receptive, having already experienced profound ideological disruption through their encounters with American abundance. Educational materials distributed in women's camps emphasized connections between democratic governance and economic productivity, explicit articulation of the system that had produced the abundance they witnessed daily. By April 1945, as Germany approached surrender, camp authorities began preparations for eventual repatriation. German women received permission to collect American recipes, techniques, and product information to take home. Helga filled a notebook with instructions for dishes she had encountered: chocolate chip cookies, pancakes with maple syrup, peanut butter sandwiches, simple foods that represented not just flavors, but an entire economic philosophy. These recipes, preserved in personal archives, would become instruction manuals, not just for cooking, but for reimagining what German society might become. December 1946, Berlin. Helga Schmidt stood in the rubble-lined street outside her family's apartment building, barely recognizing her mother. The once sturdy woman had become skeletal, aging decades in the 3 years since Helga's capture. This physical contrast, Helga healthy and well-fed, her mother gaunt from years of deprivation, embodied the inverted reality of their war experiences. Freedom in Germany had meant starvation. Captivity in America had meant abundance. "You look so well," her mother whispered, touching Helga's face with trembling fingers. This homecoming scene repeated across Germany as female auxiliaries returned from American camps between 1945 and 1947. Medical examinations conducted by the International Red Cross confirmed the paradox. German prisoners returning from America were often the healthiest people in devastated communities. Records show returnees averaged 11.8 pounds heavier than when captured, while German civilians had lost an average of 18.3 pounds during the same period. Helga opened her suitcase on the apartment's lone table. From beneath carefully folded clothing, she withdrew treasures: 2 chocolate bars, a jar of instant coffee, packets of sugar, a tin of processed cheese, soap, and a notebook filled with American recipes. These items, standard components of final Red Cross packages given to departing prisoners, became family wealth in post-war Germany, where such products remained unavailable at any price. Similar packages arrived with approximately 4,500 female auxiliaries returning from American captivity, creating small oases of American abundance in devastated Germany. "This is chocolate?" asked her 10-year-old cousin, examining the Hershey bar with suspicion. The child had no memory of chocolate, having been only 6 when such treats vanished from German shops. This generational amnesia regarding normal foods became apparent as returning prisoners introduced American consumption patterns to families who had forgotten such possibilities existed. Children who had grown up during war years had no concept of ice cream, soft drinks, or candy bars as everyday items. Throughout 1947, as Germans struggled with continued rationing, official rations remained below 1,600 calories daily until 1948. Former prisoners became unlikely cultural ambassadors for American foodways. Helga taught neighborhood women to make pancakes using precious ingredients: powdered eggs, reconstituted milk, the last of her sugar. The women gathered in her kitchen, watching as she reproduced techniques learned in the camp kitchen. These informal cooking demonstrations, replicated across Germany, transferred more than recipes. They conveyed an entire philosophy about food's role in daily life. "In America, even prisoners eat this way," Helga explained, serving the golden pancakes. This simple statement conveyed revolutionary information about systemic differences. German economic thinking had prioritized military production over civilian consumption. American production somehow managed both simultaneously. Former prisoners who had witnessed this system firsthand became its most credible advocates. When the Marshall Plan was announced in June 1947, former prisoners of war provided crucial support for American aid in communities still suspicious of American intentions. Their testimony about American abundance, not as propaganda, but as lived experience, helped overcome initial resistance. These women had seen America's productive capacity firsthand and understood its potential for rebuilding Germany. Records from American occupation authorities note that communities with returned prisoners from American camps showed significantly higher rates of cooperation with reconstruction efforts. As West Germany began its economic recovery in the early 1950s, the influence of former prisoners became apparent in unexpected ways. Consumer food industries modeled on American systems emerged with returning prisoners, often involved in their development. The first German-produced instant coffee, 1952, was developed by a food chemist who had worked in an American camp kitchen. Germany's first soft-serve ice cream machine, 1954, was imported by a businessman whose sister had described the Camp PX's ice cream counter. The first German supermarket, opened in 1957, was modeled explicitly on descriptions of American grocery stores by returned prisoners. "I wanted to create what I had seen in America," explained Margaret Müller in a 1978 interview, discussing the cafe she opened in Hamburg in 1951. "A place where abundance was normal, where cream and sugar weren't luxuries but everyday pleasures." This vision, democratic access to foods once reserved for elites, reflected American consumer culture as witnessed in prison camps. By the mid-1950s, as the German economic miracle accelerated, such businesses proliferated, systematically implementing lessons learned through captivity. The transformation extended beyond food to fundamental economic understanding. Former prisoners who had participated in camp economies, working, earning wages, purchasing goods, had experienced a functioning consumer system during Germany's collapse. This parallel education in democratic capitalism provided practical models for rebuilding. Their direct experience contradicted both Nazi economic theories and emerging Soviet communism, offering a middle path observed firsthand. What I learned in an American prison camp about abundance through production rather than conquest shaped everything I did after the war, Helga reflected in a 1985 oral history interview. The most powerful lesson wasn't taught, but demonstrated 3 times daily at the mess hall table. This education through abundance proved more effective than any formal re-education program, creating a generation of women who had personally experienced an alternative economic reality during their most impressionable years. Their transformation from Nazi auxiliaries to economic democratizers occurred not through punishment but through pancakes, not through deprivation but through dessert. In the end, the German comfort women who expected starvation until they saw American prison buffets became unlikely but effective ambassadors for the economic miracle that would rebuild their nation.